Hey there, it's Jamie from Not So Wimpy Teacher. Do you have struggling writers that you just don't feel are quite where they ought to be for their grade level? Do you teach in grades 2, 3, 4, or 5? And do you love to have simple strategies that you can implement even though you have so many other things going on in your classroom? Because if you have those struggling writers and you teach in grades 2, 3, 4, or 5, and you love simple strategies, this is the training for you. I am going to be sharing 9 different strategies with you to help to bring your writers from struggling to excited, growing. And so that's what this training is all about. I'm really excited. We are just waiting a few moments while everyone finds the training. Sometimes Facebook Live makes it a little bit hard to find these things. So if you're here and watching, can you get in the comments and tell me where you are watching from? What state are you watching from? I am currently, I'm in Phoenix, Arizona. So the Cardinals game is on right now. And I'm here with you guys instead of watching the game. So where are you from? If you can let me know in the comments. I'm still waiting for everyone to be able to find where we are. Let's see. If you're here, get in the comments. All right. Mary's here from North Carolina. Awesome. Hi, Mary. We're really happy Mary's here. She's on Team Not So Wimpy, and she is here to help you in the comments. Awesome. Hello, hello. From West Virginia. Awesome. That's Beth. Hello, Beth. All right. Just wondering, Scott, if you want to check on our tech, because it feels like something's off. All right, we are going to get started here. Hi, Sherry. Thank you for sharing your name. I wasn't sure. In the Caribbean? Look at this. I'm in the Caribbean. Oh, we're all just a tad jealous. I'm so glad you're here with us, though. Thank you. Okay. Again, this training is for teachers in grades 2 through 5, and we're going to talk about some easy ways to help your struggling writers, because the last thing you need is something complicated. Am I right? That is the last thing you need to add to your plate. So I'm going to share with you 9 different things that I think are going to make a really big difference. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. Nobody's telling me there's a problem, but I feel like there might be, but I'm looking to see if anyone's let me know what's up here. I guess they say tech is good. All right. Whew. Got the okay from the tech crew. So here we go. I'm going to share my screen with you, and we're going to get started sharing easy ways to help your struggling writers. I'm so excited to be back. This is my first live training since this summer. Many of you know that my family experienced a lot of loss, and I took a lot of time away just to be with my family. And this is my first live training back. So thank you for joining me. I'm excited to be back. I love to do these trainings. So here we go. Now, when I announced this training, I said that I was going to start by giving away some writing units. And the way to win was just that you needed to put what grade level you taught on that announcement post. And we were going to go ahead and pick some winners. So I'm going to go ahead. I've got some winners from that exact post, but also those of you who are here live, I want to give you an opportunity to win a writing bundle as well. So go ahead and just let me know in the comments what grade level you teach, and I'm going to announce these winners. My writing units, I have units for grades 2, 3, 4, and 5. They come with your lesson plans, daily lesson plans. They come, and those lesson plans, by the way, are 1 page, not like 5, 6, 10 pages you got to go through every night. No one has time for that business. So 1 page tells you exactly what to do and what to say. Comes with anchor charts that are already done for you. It comes with mentor text passages, so you don't have to go searching for books. It comes with student printables so that they can fill out graphic organizers and have mini anchor charts just like yours in their notebooks. it comes with everything you're going to need to teach writing. So if you're here right now, comment with your grade level, but I did promise that I was going to pick from that post that I put up. So I'm going back to that post right now, and I want to go ahead and I'm just gonna, oops. I push the wrong buttons all the time. Here we go. I'm going back to that post first to pick some winners, and then I'm going to pick some winners right here live. So on that post, Stacy Winslow said she teaches second, new to using writing materials and super excited about writing workshop. Stacy Winslow, if you send me an email, jamie@notsowwimpyteacher.com, I will send you the second grade writing unit. So you'll have all the materials you need for your writing workshop. And another winner, Glenda Torado. She says she's teaching fifth grade this year, and it's her first time. So Glenda, you're a winner as well, okay? So I need a winner right here on my live. I'm going over to the comments now to find myself a winner here too. Looking at what grade levels y'all are teaching, and I'm gonna grab right here. Hi, Erica, you're a winner. I'm going to go ahead and send you the fourth grade writing unit. And so the fourth grade writing unit, if you can go ahead and email me and let me know what grade level you won, I will send it to you. It's jamie@notsowwimpyteacher.com. All right. Congrats, Erica. I have a bunch of giveaways throughout this training. So that's not your only opportunity to win. All right. It looks like we do have a few tech issues where people are having trouble getting in here. So it figures, right? It figures. Tech, it's awesome until it doesn't work. Am I right? And you all have experienced it in the classroom, so you know exactly what this is like, especially if you taught virtually. All right, I'm trying to see what my team wants me to do right now, but it looks like they're going to handle it. All right, I'm checking. Looks like they got it. All right. Oops. Oops. All right. Okay. All right. Here we go. I have a lot more giveaways. So don't worry if you didn't win the first time around. There's more giveaways coming up. Here we go. Let's start with tip number 1. I put this one first because I think this is so incredibly important, my friends. You need to give yourself and your students some grace. Yeah, here's the thing. I'm seeing so many posts, and this is why I decided to do this training. As I was seeing all these posts in my Facebook groups, and they were like, oh, my students are just so struggling. They're so far behind. They're a grade level behind in writing. They're 2 grade levels or 3 grade levels. Can you relate? Do you feel like maybe that's you? Because I kept seeing these posts, and I started to think, we often give ourselves this huge goal to meet, and we feel like if we're not meeting and exceeding that level, that we aren't doing a good job as a teacher. And so we're looking at our students writing, and it's not meeting whatever goal we think it ought to meet. And we think, oh man, they're struggling. What am I going to do? They're struggling. And I wonder, though, sometimes if we're setting the bar really high, and that's what's making us feel discouraged. I often think that we feel like they ought to all be at this certain level. And if they don't quite meet that level, then it's like we start to get anxious. Oh my gosh, they're so low. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? And we show up to our students like that too. So the very first thing I need you to do is to give yourself and your students some grace. First thing, it's only the beginning of the year. The beginning of the year. It really is. So I've had someone email me and say, oh my gosh, my second graders, they aren't writing paragraphs yet. And I thought, I wouldn't expect them to be writing paragraphs yet. But sometimes we do expect it because we see what they should have to do at the end of the year and we start to panic. But remember, it's a journey and you are at the beginning. If they already knew how to write paragraphs, you wouldn't really need a writing workshop this year, right? What would be the point of needing to do this entire writing workshop if your students were already at that level? So what if this is exactly where they're supposed to be at the beginning of the year? I mean, does that change the way you think about your students if you think this is exactly where they're supposed to be when they come to me? It won't be where they are at the end of the year, but this is exactly where they're supposed to be right now. I also want to say something. What if it's normal? Right now, those of you watching, how many of you have at least one student who you think is below level? Just at least one student. Just say me in the comments. I'm guessing if you showed up for a training about how to help struggling writers, that every single one of you should be writing me in the comments right now because you're probably here because you have a struggling writer. And then it got me thinking, I get emails and social posts every single day from people saying, I have writers below level. If we all have writers below level, what if that's actually not below level? What if it really is normal? And I think when I start thinking that way, it changes the way I'm going to show up for my students. What if it's totally normal to have some students who write at one level and some students who write another, and that's how it's supposed to be? What if you showed up like, this is exactly what I expected? Then it makes you less anxious. And, I've gotten people who are just like over the top upset because some of their students are below level. And I'm like, but everyone has below level students. So that's normal. It's okay. And sometimes I think we have to be told that because the type of teacher you are, you want them to succeed. And you consider succeeding to be meeting every single standard. And that's okay. We'll talk more about that during the training. But what if having students who are not on grade level is completely normal? Just like it takes some babies longer to learn how to walk and talk, and it takes some students longer to learn how to read. Well, guess what? Writing isn't like, oh, as soon as you get to the second grade, you can write 5-paragraph essays. It's not that way. Everyone progresses at a different pace. They're supposed to. It's normal. I think when I start to phrase it that way in my head, now when I see that student's a little below, I'm like, I totally expected this. It just takes off some of that pressure for me. And then let's also remember, my friends, that school has not been the same for the last almost 2 years now. Your students probably haven't had quality writing instruction. And if you can go into the classroom assuming this is the first year that they're receiving quality instruction, guess what you're gonna see? You're gonna actually look at your students and say, whoa, I have some students above level. I didn't expect this since it's their first year getting quality writing instruction, instead of, oh my gosh, they're so below level, which is a whole different like nasty mindset. But when you come in like, wow, I did not expect to have 2 or 3 students who could write this well. Even when we didn't have a pandemic, I would tell you to assume this is the first year your students are receiving quality writing instruction only because, not because I don't believe in the teachers at your school, but most teachers have not received professional training in how to teach writing. And so it's a struggle for so many teachers. And so when I would get my students, I would just assume that this was the first year they were going to have an amazing writing workshop. When I assumed that, that's when I could turn it around and be like, wow, I'm pretty excited about these 5 writers and what they already have going for them. The rest of my writers, I understand that where they're at, and I'm super excited that they get to be in my writing class this year. We're going to see major growth. So those of you who are just joining us, we're having a lot of people just start to join us. We are doing a training on strategies, easy strategies to help struggling writers. And the first strategy we're talking about is giving yourself and your students some grace. All right. We all have struggling writers. Just so you know, every teacher has struggling writers. Every teacher has students that aren't at the level they want or aren't growing as fast as they think they ought to. You're not alone, and it's totally normal. All right. The second tip, this is super important. Focus on developing their love for writing above mechanics. I'm so sorry Facebook isn't working for you guys, but I'm glad you're heading over to YouTube. Awesome. Okay, focus on developing their love for writing above mechanics. Here are the types of posts and emails that I get. And I understand it because been there, done this, but I get a lot of posts that say, my students can't even write a sentence, much less a paragraph. My students aren't capitalizing or using punctuation. They just don't know how to write a sentence. I get this a lot. And my advice to you is to remember that mechanics, even though they're the most obvious problem with a student's writing, they're actually not even close to the most important part of a student's writing. Let me say that again. Yes, the mechanics are so easy to see. It's the first thing that just pops up. It's the mechanics and the handwriting, right? Those are the first things that you can see. It's so easy to tell that they don't understand a lot of grammar rules. But it's the least important part of teaching writing. Even if you look at your rubric, regardless of what rubric you're using, probably about 80% of the points on the rubric have nothing to do with mechanics and everything to do with content, like whether there's a lead, whether they have transitions and good word choice. All of those things make up significantly more points on a rubric than things like spelling and capitalization and punctuation, which usually make up 20% or less of the points, which means if you only focus on mechanics, they can only grow 20%. If you start focusing on content, they can grow 80%. But before we can do either of those things, we need writers who love writing. And I'm going to guess. Tell me if I'm right. Go ahead in the comments. If you can kind of just tell me, do your students love writing? Yes or no? Right now, when you say it's time for writing, do you get cheers or do you get moaning? Because when I was teaching writing in those early years, I got a lot of moaning. My students didn't like writing. What about yours? Hector says no. Misty, Lori says some. Yeah, that's fair. I would always have those few, and they were the easiest to teach, aren't they? But a lot of you are saying not so much. Yeah, I'm glad I'm not alone, but I also want you to see that you're not alone. Now, once we develop their love for writing, we'll be able to work on content and eventually mechanics. But we have to start with what's most important. If they hate writing, they are not going to become better writers. So we are going to be going up against a block, okay? So I want to encourage you. This is something I am so passionate about, but resist the urge to do boring sentence writing and paragraph writing units. I see this so often, especially at the beginning of the year. They're like, oh my gosh, they don't write a perfect sentence. They don't write a good sentence. So I'm just going to work on writing sentences for a few weeks, and then I'll work on writing paragraphs for a few weeks. Now, before you think I'm crazy, hear me out. When we do this, the first important thing to realize is that we really are taking away their love for writing. When we're just sitting there mapping out sentences, diagramming sentences, and talking about subjects and predicates, that very rarely gets kids excited to write, okay? Like when you tell me like, hey, we are going to diagram sentences and figure out where the subjects and predicates are, I don't think, oh, whoopee, that's so much fun. I'm guessing your students don't either. It's boring, and it teaches them that writing is boring, okay? The other thing to think about is that there is not one perfect way to write a sentence. As much as we try to teach that in grammar, there are lots of different ways to write a sentence. And so when we just do a unit like on how to write a sentence, we're teaching them how to write one kind of sentence exactly like we told them. And then later we're complaining, we're like, oh, the writing is so boring. It's just so boring. Yeah, because they learn to regurgitate instead of be creative. Okay. Paragraphs. I get this a lot too. Hey, Jamie, can you make a paragraph writing unit? And my answer is absolutely not. because there is no one right way to write a paragraph. That whole hamburger paragraph thing, that's crazy. If you haven't heard of it, the hamburger, like the top bun is your topic sentence, and then like the meat is like your 3 supporting details, and then the bottom bun is like your conclusion sentence. Sure, I mean, topic sentence, three main sentences and a concluding sentence, that could be a paragraph in an informational report. Not that every paragraph in an informational report should be in that perfect hamburger, because that would be boring too. But also, I want to remind you that in a narrative, you can have a paragraph that's just one sentence, because every time you change people who are talking, you have to change paragraphs. You can have a one sentence paragraph. So while you teach this whole unit on how to write this hamburger paragraph, you're actually not teaching that paragraphs are different depending on the genre and depending on the information that you want to share. So it really is just taking up a lot of your time. Instead, teach paragraph writing within context. When you're teaching your personal narratives, you're going to teach them where to break up paragraphs. When you're teaching informational writing, you can teach them where to break up paragraphs. But the reality is, even if they don't break up any of their paragraphs, they're not going to lose so many points on the rubric that they couldn't actually get a good score, because where to break up a paragraph is not usually the biggest chunk of the rubric. But it seems to be the first thing we focus on, and the thing that we get really concerned about early on in the year. And I want to sort of give you permission to not be concerned about this yet. This isn't the most important thing. Their love for writing is the most important thing you need to be focused on right now. Students who love to write will write more. And guess what? The more they write, the better the writer they become. It's the same thing with reading. You guys know it in reading, right? In reading, you're like, we want to get our readers to love books, because if they love reading, they'll just keep reading. It's the same with writing. So we don't need to hyper focus on how to spell and where to break up a paragraph. What we need to do is get our students so excited to tell their stories. Because once they get excited to tell their stories, it's going to be so much easier to teach into all of the little skills and strategies that are going to make their writing really good. We got to start with the most important thing, okay? So here's some ideas for making writing more fun for your students. To help them find that love for writing, I highly recommend giving lots of choice. This is one of the quickest ways for you to get your writers excited to write, is to give them lots of choice. All right, here's some ideas of things you can give choice with. One is utensils. So when I first started teaching writing, I always made my kids use yellow #2 Ticonderoga pencils. I love those. I'm not bashing the yellow #2 Ticonderoga pencil, but I did realize at some point that not all of my students love to write with a pencil. Not all of my students even have their best handwriting when they write with pencil. I was actually going to a staff meeting and I was searching all over for my favorite purple Flair pen when it kind of occurred to me. I'm like, when I go to a staff meeting, I gotta have my favorite pen, because sometimes staff meetings can be a little painful anyway. So I gotta have my pen, right? And it occurred to me that maybe my students also have a favorite writing utensil where they feel creative, where they feel excited. And if all it took was giving them the utensil that they were excited to use, and they were more willing to put words on paper, it would be worth it. And yeah, some of you are like, oh my gosh, would using a pen in writing, now they won't be able to erase, it'll be messy. Guys, it will be messy. Honestly, writing drafts isn't supposed to be neat. So I'm a kind of a neat freak, so it took me a long time to get over that fear, but they're not supposed to be neat, so it's okay. And if they don't erase, you actually get to see their original thoughts. When they erase it because they don't think they're good enough, you lose that opportunity to boost them up, because they wrote something, they didn't have confidence about it, now they erase it, you have no idea what they wrote. But when they write in pen and you can see it, you can compliment them, and it makes a big difference. A lot of teachers push back and are like, oh my gosh, pen, but then they do it and they're like, oh my gosh, that was a pretty easy change with huge results. So, I highly recommend trying it. Put a bunch of different utensils into a space in your classroom, and these are utensils that can only be used during writing workshop. Okay, how about letting your writers choose the place where they would like to write? So I like things to be just so. If you don't know that about me, but I just really do. Like right now, I'm upset that Facebook isn't working because I like things to be just so, but we're rolling with the punches here. And when I was teaching writing, I would make all my students sit in their desks to write. My excuse was like, oh, their handwriting will be better. But what I later realized was that I was stifling them. I think about when I need to be creative and write, sometimes I need to just take my notebook and curl up on the couch, and that's where I feel comfortable, right? And I thought maybe some of my students don't feel comfortable just sitting at their desk. Some do, and some don't. So I started letting my students choose their place they were going to write. Some of them write under their desk. Some of them write sitting in a beanbag chair or a stool. Some of them just like to sit on the floor. Some of them like to lay on their bellies. I don't know. I had a lot of belly layers. It's just seemed to be where they were most comfortable. And so we went with it. Like I stopped deciding where they had to write and told them that they can write where they wanted to in the classroom as long as they were writing and not distracted. I reserved the right to choose their place if they couldn't choose a good place. All right, the other thing that I allow my students choice on is the topic of their writing. I used to tell them exactly what we're going to write about. I'm like, okay, it is, February, so we're going to write about presidents because of President's Day. And so we're all going to write about George Washington. And then I would sit there and tell them like, okay, in this paragraph, we're going to write about George Washington's childhood. All right, we now need a topic sentence. Now we need some supporting sentences. Now we need a concluding sentence. And I would like walk them through this prompt. It was the way I felt I had control. But what I really did, again, was teach my kids to hate writing, because if they were not interested in learning about George Washington, then they learned that writing wasn't interesting. And I also was walking them through it step by step. So I was teaching them how to write that piece, but not actually teaching them how to be a writer. So the next time they saw a prompt, they didn't know how to even start without me to tell them what to do. So now I learned that I need to give them choice. It's scary at first, but it gets so easy after you've been working on it. And so if we're writing an informational report, they need to write an informational report. Of course, they need to do the genre we're writing about, but they get to pick the topic. So they don't want to write about George Washington, but maybe they want to write about dolphins. I always have kids who want to write about dolphins. Great. Or sea turtles, or maybe they want to write about the state they were born in. Maybe they want to write about Disneyland. Why not? Now they're super excited about their topic, and I would have students coming up to me at recess like, oh, Miss Tears, last night I Googled more about the sea turtle, and did you know? And they start like regurgitating all these facts they learned. That's right. I didn't tell them they had to do anything at home, but they were so dang excited about their topic, they couldn't stop thinking about it. They couldn't wait for writing workshop to put more on the paper because they chose the topic that they were interested in. These are just some of the ways that I help my students to find their love for writing. There are many, many more things you can do to help them find their love for writing, but I feel like giving choice is some of the easiest thing you can do. And I have teachers all the time that are like, I offered them pens today in writing, and they looked at me like, oh my gosh, writing is going to be so cool this year. Like that's all it takes. It's just these minor changes to have them go, oh, this isn't going to be the same as it was last year. All right, let's move on because I've got 9 things to share with you. So tip number 3 is break your mini lessons into small pieces. So I used to do this, and please tell me I'm not alone. Please tell me. But I didn't really know what I was doing. I didn't have any courses on how to teach writing. And so that's my excuse. And it's a good one. I would sit there and be like, okay, we're writing opinion essays today. Don't forget, you need a strong opinion statement. You're going to need at least 3 reasons. I'd call it a triple stuffed Oreo. And you need some examples to go along with all those reasons. Don't forget, you need to have paragraphs, pay attention to punctuation, capitalization, and a conclusion where you restate your reason. Okay, everyone, go write. And my students would kind of like trudge back to their seats. And like a few of them might start writing, a few would start doodling, a few would just stare into space, others would stick up their hand and be like, I don't know what to write about. It took me a long time to realize this, but I was completely overwhelming them with this laundry list of things that I wanted them to do in their writing. I was just making it really complicated. And I want you to think about this as scaffolding, because we do it in other subject areas. And a really good tip is to think about your favorite subject, whether it's math or reading. What do you do in math or reading that helps your students be so successful? A lot of times that can come right over to your writing workshop. And I realized that in math, I never sit down and go, okay, today we're going to multiply. Here are 6 strategies for multiplication, and go multiply. No, we break that down, right? We're like, today we're going to skip count, and maybe the next day or 2 days later, we're like, hey, let's talk about some equal groups. And maybe down the road, we teach them a tape diagram, and we start teaching different strategies. We break it down, right? We don't teach it all in one day. So I was like, why am I overwhelming my students by trying to teach everything in one day, making it this massive laundry list? And when I do that, why am I surprised that they're struggling? Of course they're struggling. By breaking your lessons down, you're going to increase your writer's confidence. All of your writers, not just your struggling writer, but it's really important that your struggling writer's confidence starts to increase. Because when we get the laundry list of things we want them to do, instead of breaking it into tiny pieces, they immediately think, whoa, that's too much. And they don't even give it a try. But we break it down to something so tiny. They're like, that's it? That's all I have to know today? Okay, I can do that. All right. This is super important. I want to give you a couple of examples, okay? So we want to think about how we can take something that we would normally teach in a writing workshop lesson and break it into more lessons. That way they can be smaller. So instead of doing a lesson on 3 different types of leads and being like, okay, here are 3 different ways to do leads, now go write. Instead, try to break it down to at least 2 days, okay? So you can do day 1, you could do using automatopoeias and using questions. And then day 2, you can hit action leads. Just by breaking the lesson into 2 different days, that's going to make a huge, huge difference in their confidence level. They don't have to remember as much. I just saw someone say, hey, what should we do if our students can't spell? I want you to go back to tip number 2 if you were not here for that, because it's so, so, so important, okay? Okay. Instead of doing a lesson on adding dialogue to your story, because I would do that. I'd be like, guys, we need to add dialogue to our story. Dialogue is the words that characters say. So I want you to go back to your story today and add dialogue. I couldn't figure out why my writers were so, like, most of them said they were done like 2 seconds after they started. And most of them didn't have dialogue, right? Well, I started breaking it down until at least 3 days. And to be real honest, if you teach 2nd or 3rd grade, I'd break this down into 4 or even 5 days. So day 1, what is dialogue? This is a huge lesson we forgot to do. We think we can say it's the words characters say, and that all of our students will know what that means. They don't. In fact, if you think about it, my mom told me to clean my room, and clean your room, said mom, sound the same when you're 8 or 9 years old. So really taking a day to simply break it apart and give them so many examples of what dialogue looks like and what it doesn't look like, and not focus on punctuation or even having to add it to their story, just what the heck it is. Then on day 2, you could talk about punctuating dialogue with tag at the end. You know, the said mom, that's the tag. Tag at the end is probably the most common and probably the easiest to punctuate, but we all know that dialogue is not easy to punctuate, right? It's pretty challenging. Most adults still struggle with it. Day 3, you could move on to punctuating dialogue with tag at the beginning, but honestly, especially if I was teaching 2nd or 3rd grade, I would continue with punctuating dialogue at the end. So now we're breaking up this lesson into at least 3 days, okay? At least 3 days. But here's something really important. I got to tell you this. Even though you break down all of the skills you want them to teach, I want you to know that every student won't master every skill. And that's okay. It's normal. It's perfectly acceptable. That means that you might have a student who never does a good lead, even though you did some amazing lead lessons. And you're going to have like 5 or 6 students who never add dialogue. Okay? It's all right. We forget that as we're teaching our personal narrative or our opinion unit, that we're teaching them tons of different skills, and that every skill will help them to grow as a writer. Every skill we're teaching will help them to increase the points on the rubric at the end. They don't have to get every skill to actually see an improvement and growth, right? They don't have to get 100% is what I'm trying to say. And so often we get discouraged by that. We're like, I taught a dialogue lesson and Timmy and Anna and Sarah still don't do dialogue. And I'm like, that's okay. Because you know what? You can review dialogue in conferences. You can teach it again during the second masterpiece. You can teach it again during your fiction narrative. And even if at the end of the year, you have a few students who don't know how to put dialogue in your stories, it's okay. Because you are just one stop on their educational journey. If they end up leaving third grade, not being able to do dialogue, guess what? It's going to come up again in fourth grade. And every student isn't going to learn it at the same pace. So I'm not saying you shouldn't keep reteaching, but I also want you to take a deep breath. Because every skill that they do master equals growth. They don't have to master 100% of the skills. I really hope that you can keep this in mind when you look around at your students. I hope you don't expect every student to master every skill. When we expect that, then yeah, we feel defeated in writing. But what if we're just looking at, have they grown at all? Have they learned anything new in the last week? Not have they learned all 5 of the lessons I taught, but did they learn any of them? Because that's growth. That is growth. All right, I want to do another giveaway. All right, we have a new Halloween project-based learning activity. And with Halloween just a few weeks away, I thought it might be fun to give away a few of our new Halloween project-based learning activity. I know it's not a writing activity, but I have a feeling a lot of you are looking for fun Halloween activities that are no prep for the teacher because you like easy things. And so I thought I could give away a few of these. And all you have to do to enter is just in the comments, wherever you're watching, what is your favorite genre of writing to teach? Don't say none. Dig deep. Do you like personal narrative? Do you like opinion? Do you like informational fiction narrative? Maybe you like reading response? Maybe you like poetry? I very rarely get anyone who says poetry is their favorite, but every now and again. All right, yeah, we're getting lots of answers here. I'm just waiting to grab a few and give away some of our new Halloween activity. Hopefully you guys have seen this. It's so cute. There's lots of different activities you're going to do, from like carving their pumpkin to picking the route for trick-or-treating. It's so cute. All right, time for me to pick a few winners. I love this. Sarah says, I love teaching personal narratives. I really like to hear the stories about my students' lives. That is the fun part about personal narrative and why I do it at the beginning of the year, because hearing their true stories helps me to connect with them on a deeper level throughout the year. So I love this. Sarah Larson, send me an email, jamie@notsowimpyteacher.com, and we would love to send you our new Halloween project-based learning activity. All right. Let's see. I'm looking for some different ones. Hector says opinion is his favorite. So I love opinion as well. I think my students like opinion the best because we so rarely ask 8 and 9-year-olds what their opinion is. And so it's fun when they get to have one. So I agree. It is one of the best genres. Hector, email me at jamie@notsowimpyteacher.com. I would love to send you our new Halloween project-based learning activity. I want to grab one more. Here we go. Charlene says she loves to teach poetry because all the children surprise themselves. Wow, Charlene, that's awesome. I bet your students think poetry is going to be really hard to write. You must do an amazing job teaching it, and so they're pretty impressed with their outcome. That sounds so exciting. Charlene, send me an email at jamie@notsowimpyteacher.com. I would love to send you our new Halloween project-based learning. I have some grammar giveaways coming up later in our training. So if you haven't won yet, you still have the opportunity to win a giant grammar bundle. All right. Amanda likes to teach poetry as well. Poetry was the hardest for me. I have to admit, poetry was the hardest for me, but we can all have our favorite and our hardest and still be phenomenal writing teachers. I want you to know that, okay? All right. We did 3 tips already. If you missed any of them, make sure you go back later. Number 1 was to give yourself and your students grace. Number 2 was to focus on their love for learning over their mechanics and their handwriting. I still see comments like, what if their spacing isn't good and stuff like that. That is the least of your concerns, especially this early in the school year, but that is going to get them very few points on the rubric. So we're going to focus on love for learning, then content, mechanics last. And then tip number 3 was to break those lessons into smaller pieces. When you look at what you're planning to teach next week, I really want to ask yourself if you could break it down into smaller pieces so that your students have more confidence and are more likely to remember and use the lesson. All right, let's move on to number 4, and that is to keep giving your writers independent writing time. So this happens, and if it's happened to you, that totally fess up to it because it happened to me. See, I tried the writing workshop, and when I saw that my students weren't producing exceptional writing, I got discouraged and was like, okay, I guess, my writers are too low to do independent writing time. I guess we'll just, keep doing this whole group writing where I tell them what to put in every paragraph because my writers are just too low for this. And what I was doing again was stealing their love for writing, but I was also just not even giving them the opportunity to grow. It's just like any other subject. At first, it's a little bit challenging to do independently, but you keep getting better with practice. And if we don't allow our students that time to practice, then their growth is going to be stunted. It's going to be so slow. And I know it's kind of scary to give students independent writing time when you're like, but they're not good writers. Well, not yet. They're going to become better writers by practicing. Now, here's where I went wrong, though. I was just telling them to go write. Have any of you ever done this? You can totally be honest with me and this group here. We get it. Have you ever done this? Or you just tell them to go write. You're like, okay, it's writing time. Get out your notebooks and write. I mean, yeah, that is fine for your high writers. Your high writers are like, sweet, it's writing time. Now I've got like 15 stories to write about. I'm going to write a chapter book. But your on level and your struggling writers are like, oh, I mean, that's giving them no direction, right? It's like, write what? Write about what? Right? Like, how much do I have to write? That's when you start getting those questions, and they start to feel completely overwhelmed. Where at the end of the writing time, they've written nothing, and you're disappointed by that. But it's really important that we give them some guidance. We never in math say just, okay, go do math. Even in reading, we very rarely tell them just go read. A lot of times we're giving them some direction there too. Our students do better when they have some direction. So here you go. Here's what I figured out after a couple of years of watching my students doodle and stare at the clock. I realized I needed to give a little bit of direction. So after the mini lesson, that short lesson we were talking about, give students a simple task that is related to the lesson. So instead of just saying, go write, we're actually going to give them a specific thing to do with their writing, a very short thing to do. This should be a task that can be completed in 10 minutes or less, and you're giving your students maybe 15, 20 minutes to write. So really, almost all of your students should be able to complete this task during their writing time. That's how small and targeted and focused this task is. Okay, it has to be short and sweet, not go write an opinion essay. That's long, overwhelming, confusing. Let me give you some examples. All right, students, now that we've talked about strong opinion statements, I want you to go back to your draft and revise your opinion statement so that it's longer using one of the strategies we talked about. So if you look at this, all they would have to do to be successful today is revise one sentence. Now, some of you are like, well, that would be a waste of time. Really? Because on the opinion rubric, you get quite a few points for having a strong opinion statement. It's a really important part of an opinion essay. And if my students learned nothing more this week than how to write a strong opinion statement, I've probably taken them farther to being a great writer than if I just told them, go write an opinion essay. Make sure it has a strong opinion statement. Okay? I strongly advise you to do this for your struggling writers because it gives them confidence. all they have to do is fix one sentence. When they fix one sentence, they're successful. Then they feel success one day, and then maybe the next day they get a little success. And after a while, you're building up their confidence bank. This is where they get bolder about putting more words on the paper over time because they've had success in the past. Right now, just assume their past has been filled with a lack of success and they have zero confidence. You can start building that bank for them by giving them such short tasks like this. Like you taught them a strategy or two for making a strong opinion statement. You send them back to revise their opinion statement to be stronger. Here's another example. Okay, class, now that we have talked about using action as a lead, that's all we talked about that day in the lesson. Remember, we made it so short. Now we talked about how to use action as lead. I want you to brainstorm a possible action lead for your story. Again, I'm not telling them they have to write the whole story. I'm not telling them that they have to even write an entire paragraph. I'm really just asking them to focus on the lead. The lead will be important on the rubric, an important part of their growth. It's also going to give them so much confidence if they can do that one lead. Someone asked, why is writing a strong opinion after drafting? We draft first. That's the first part of the writing. Well, we do some pre-writing. We teach them about opinion writing and we rehearse some stories. We draft. Now we're in the revision stage. If you spend all of your time teaching all the skills first before you allow them to write a story, they aren't going to love writing. That becomes incredibly boring because they don't get to get the story out. So you want them to get the story out really early on. That way, all your lessons can be go back and revise this one little thing. I have to get teachers that say, how do you get your students to revise? I'm like, well, a lot of times my students don't even realize that's what they're doing. But I teach a lesson like this one on action lead. I ask them to brainstorm some possible action leads, and then they look at their lead and they're like, oh, this is better than the one I wrote. Boom, they just revised their writing. They often don't know that's what they did, and that's okay, right? The important thing is they're making their story better every single day. Some people get discouraged because during the drafting stage, students only wrote 2 sentences or 3 sentences, and they weren't even complete sentences. That's fine, because you spend so much time revising that at the end, there will definitely be growth. Most of these tasks I'm talking about, I told you, are revision tasks, and students will work directly in their draft. So just going back to that draft over and over again. Does the draft get messy? Yep. But I already told you, drafting, revising, and then editing, they are messy. That's why you have to have a final draft later. You would need a final draft later if everything was neat the whole time. Students get used to this messiness after you do it. You conference with them after a mini lesson. With the writing workshop, during independent time, I'm always conferencing. And we're going to talk about conferences in just a minute, Carol. Now, this helps students feel confident and makes writing feel more doable to them. So your struggling writers have it in their head that they are not a good writer. They might have it in their head they're not a good writer because someone told them that. They might think they're not a good writer because they've never had success or felt like they knew what to do during writing. But when they are taught a strategy and then told, go back and fix this one sentence or add 2 sentences here. Now they're like, okay, this is doable. My sentence might not be as good as the sentence of the girl sitting next to me, but I could write a sentence. And as they start to have those wins, then they start to get braver. This is where you start to take the struggling writer from that, like, I'm not going to do this, I'm too scared, to at least trying it. But I also have to tell you this. I want you to know this because I don't want you to be discouraged. Even if you give these small tasks, I want you to keep in mind, every student will not complete every task for a number of different reasons. Some really didn't understand your mini lesson, and instead of raising your hand and saying that they didn't understand the mini lesson, they sat there. That's pretty typical. And so when it got time to actually use a strategy, they didn't know how. That may be one reason they didn't do it. Maybe they didn't do it because the strategy was a little bit too challenging for where they are right now. Maybe that was a little bit of a higher strategy. Maybe they were having an off day. Maybe they took too long on it, so they didn't finish it. I understand every student will not complete every task. We can get down and out about that and be like, oh my gosh, I taught leads and I told them to go write a lead, and then I walked around and there were 4 people who didn't have a lead. We could do that. Or we can remind ourselves from the beginning, every student won't have a lead at the end of today. then be able to help them further in conferences and even in our next masterpiece. But remember, they don't have to do every skill to see growth. So even that kiddo who didn't write a lead this week, but maybe they did another part in their writing and it already is growing. We're focusing on helping them to be better writers. They're not going to master every single skill and standard right now. If we go into it knowing that, I think we're less discouraged throughout the entire process. Okay, I told you we're going to talk about conferences, and here it is. A really important part about helping your struggling writers is to differentiate using writing conferences. And let me tell you what, writing conferences scare so many of the teachers that I work with, and they scared me too. So if you kind of hear the term writing conferences, you're like, oh, I can't right now. We can't do that. I understand. I was definitely in that boat where I was like, my writers aren't good enough at writing to write independently, so we can't have conferences. I also struggled to make conferences meaningful. So the few times that I really made time for writing conferences, it ended up kind of being a hot mess. And this is a hot mess. I told my head, oh, that's not worth it. Let's not keep doing it. Biggest problem I had with writing conferences is I was trying to meet with students one-on-one. I started thinking about it. I go, I have math small groups. I have reading small groups. I love small groups. Why in writing don't I do exactly what's working in reading and math? It was an aha moment for me. You don't have to meet with every writer one-on-one. We somehow think we do because we're writing different stories. But in reading groups, we can meet with our readers all at once, even if they're reading a different book back at their desk, because there's certain skills and strategies we want to review with them. You can do the same for your writers. This actually is so much easier than you think it is. And most of the time, you're letting your nerves and fear get in the way of getting past and getting to the point where you just have this nice routine where you do conferences. Your struggling writers will grow by leaps and bounds by these simple conferences. So conferencing should happen every day during your independent writing time. It's important that you teach your students from the beginning how to be independent during writing, just the way you would during reading or math to-do centers. And so we focus on growing their stamina, and we also focus on what kind of problems they might come up with. Like, what should you do if your pen stops working? What should you have to go to the bathroom? What if the computer's not working? What if, we go through all the problems right away in the beginning and make an anchor chart so that when we start doing conferences, which is usually sometime after the first draft, they are more independent. We just teach them that this is necessary, okay? But it happens during independent writing time. Now, this is the part where it gets easier. Instead of meeting with them one-on-one, split your class into groups and meet with one group per day. Yeah, don't try to meet with every student every day. That's chaos and crazy. If your students are going to be writing for somewhere between 15 and 25 minutes per day, you can have a conference group that goes for 10 to 15 minutes. And if you do this, you're going to meet with all your students every week, which for a lot of students is more than you're meeting with them now. I know in my classroom, the students who raised their hand the most got the most attention, but a lot of times it was the really quiet kid sitting in the corner who needed more attention and didn't get it because he wasn't the loud one. Right? So if you meet with all your students, now you're helping your high writers continue to grow, you're on level, and you're struggling. Here's what I would do to make it super, super simple. Choose one skill that you recently taught. So just look back at the whole group lessons for the past week. What was the most important lesson you taught? The one where you really hope the majority of your students are going to master. I want you to go ahead and pull your group for that day, like your Monday group you pull on Monday, and you would ask them to read a small portion of the writing. So let's just say that on Monday, you've decided you want to go over leads with your writers this week. So Monday, pull your Monday conference group and have each student read their lead. That's it. You are not reading it, so you don't have to decipher their handwriting. Only they have to, which is challenging for some of them, but it's important they see that it's challenging. But they are only reading their lead, not the whole story. Not the whole story. Because you don't have time for that. They don't have time for that, and it doesn't help them grow. It's boring. So you have them choose to read just that one sentence, and then you can go around and talk about which type of lead each person has. Okay, here's where it gets tricky. They're like, what if I ask them all to read leads and they don't have a lead? This happens. Don't get stressed out. If they didn't use that skill and they can't give you the example, maybe you said, okay, dialogue, share a spot in your story where you use dialogue. And like 2 of the kids are like, oh, I didn't use dialogue. That's okay. That's why you're doing the conference in the first place. If they all get it perfectly, there would have been no reason for you to conference other than to make yourself feel good that obviously the mini lesson went well. You're conferencing with them because you want to figure out the holes so you can help them grow. So when they don't have it at conference, it's like, all right, cool. I figured out the hole. I can help you. A lot of times what I would do is if I had maybe a couple of students who did it really well, I could send them back to their seat to work on their task for the day. And I could just work with the ones that were struggling. And I would just pull out the anchor charts and stuff that we did during the mini lesson and just review it again. Because now in this small group situation, you're able to talk right to them and ask them and get a little bit more information from them. So this is so incredibly powerful. This is going to help you to help more students. If you keep trying to do it one kid at a time, only certain students are going to get your time because it's limited. All right, number 6. This is important. A lot of you were asking, but what about the grammar? What about if they don't do, good sentences? What if they're not spelling right? I want to tell you that you should include a separate time for teaching and practicing grammar. Because it's not the most important part of writing workshop. It's not going to get very much time during writing workshop, and that's why you need to have a separate time set aside for grammar. Grammar can be taught in 10 minutes per day if you have a routine, meaning you're not doing something different every week. I used to do something different. I'm like, oh, I'm teaching verbs. Let me go to Pinterest, search verb activities. I'll print out 4 or 5 of them, and we'll do them this week. And then the next week, I'm like, oh, I'm doing plural nouns this week. Let me go to Pinterest and find some more stuff. This lack of routine took too much classroom time because I was always having to teach them how to do the activity, which was taking almost as much time as actually teaching the grammar skill. So I can spend more time on the grammar skill if I have a routine where we do the exact same activities every single week. So here's my routine. Monday, I would teach a very specific skill with a PowerPoint lesson. I do this before my writing workshop. I just do 10 minutes right before writing workshop. Monday, I pull out the PowerPoint. We're teaching a very specific lesson. The one pictured here is adverbs. And we're just teaching them how to identify adverbs. On Tuesday, we make a resource so that they can use this as a reference throughout the year, because let me tell you, friends, they're not going to remember what an adverb is even 3 or 4 weeks later. But if they have a reference where they can go back and find the answer, to me, that is a much more practical life skill than just like complete memorization anyway. So we use interactive notebooks where we can record the rules and practice the different skills. I just keep the cuts super straight and boring. We do not color. And so this is a very quick activity, but they can go back and look at it over and over again. In fact, my strugglers can use this as a reference throughout the week and later when they need to. Wednesday, we incorporate grammar into a writing prompt. This does not take the place of writing workshop, but I give them a very quick prompt that would be that everyone would probably have an answer to, and I ask them to use the skill from the week. So this one was about pronoun and antecedent agreement. And so it says write at least 5 sentences about something fun that you've done at school, and remember to use some pronouns in your writing. And then they need to underline antecedents and underline pronouns in a different color. So this doesn't replace writing workshop, but it starts to show them that grammar has to do with writing. It starts to make that connection. I did not do my interactive notebooks. I did not do them. Someone asked if I did them virtual. I didn't. I did them in their notebook where they did their interactive notebook activity, but we now offer both because, hey, it's a different world now. Students would do the interactive notebook mostly independently, but you definitely could be doing it with a group of students who needed help. Thursday, practice the skill with a task card scoot. This is so much fun. My students like this part because they get to get out of their desk. But for me, it's a really good time to be walking around with students who are struggling and helping, because I can just walk alongside of them and they can use their notebook, and it's easy to differentiate because I have 24 task cards, but I can only require 12 from some students if I wanted to. So this is really helpful for me just to make sure where they're at, okay? Grammar can be done in the same notebook as reading, but not as writing. Writing really needs more space. Friday, formally assess the skill. Quick assessment, super quick. This takes most of my kids less than the 10 minutes I have allotted. This allows me to see where they are at. So that's my grammar routine. And because I have a routine, the beginning of the year takes longer, right? Because they don't know the routine yet. They don't know how to do interactive notebooks yet. They don't know how to do a task card scoot yet. But after you've been doing it for a few weeks, it becomes habit and they can do it very quickly. That's where we start to benefit from the routine. All right, let's do another giveaway. I would like to give away some of my grammar year-long bundles. I have bundles. Right now, I have bundles for grades 3, 4, and 5. So do you teach grades 3, 4, or 5? If you do, I'd love for you to enter this giveaway. And all you have to do is, what's your favorite pen for grading? Comment in the comment box where you're watching the video. What is your favorite pen for grading? It can be any pen. Don't worry. I understand everyone doesn't like the exact same pen as me. But what pen do you grab when it's grading time? I'm going to go ahead and pick 3 winners. And if you are a winner, just email me. Let me know whether you'd like 3rd, 4th, or 5th grade grammar. We do have a 2nd grade grammar bundle. It's growing, though. It's not finished. And unfortunately, it's really hard for me to give away bundles that are not finished. So I'm going to give away 3rd, 4th, and 5th. Let's grab someone here. All right. Annie Ferris says she likes the Mr. Sketch smelly markers. I actually love to sniff those as well. Annie, you are our first winner. Go ahead and email me at jamie@notswopyteacher.com. Let me know if you'd like 3rd, 4th, or 5th grammar, and we will get that to you. Let's see. I got to find me another winner here. That sounds fun. Charlene says she likes glitter pens because they're fun. Yeah. That does sound fun. I don't like glitter when it comes to like third graders doing art projects, but I could be okay with a glitter pen. That's totally different. Charlene, you're a winner. Go ahead and email me, jamie@notswopyteacher.com. Let me know if you'd like 3rd, 4th, or 5th, and we'll send the grammar bundle along. The grammar bundle includes your PowerPoint mini lessons, your interactive notebook activities, your Wednesday writing prompts, your task card scoots, and your assessment. So it's everything I would use in my writing or my grammar routine. Okay, wow. This is really specific and I love this. Cassie, she likes the buttered biscuit scented flare pen. I didn't know there was a buttered biscuit one, Cassie, but I love the scented flare pens. My team makes fun of me because I sniff them a lot on Zoom meetings when I get bored. But now I feel like I need to find the buttered biscuit one because that sounds so good. So Cassie, go ahead and send me an email, jamie@notsowwimpyteacher.com. Let me know if you'd like 3rd, 4th, or 5th grammar, and we will send it right over. So, wow. Congratulations to our winners. I could really read about your pens all day long. I have sort of a pen obsession right now. Those use those friction erasable ones. Do they really erase? Because I've never tried them because I just feel like they wouldn't erase, but lots of you say they erase. So I might have to try those out. You didn't know there were scented flare pens, Amanda? I know. They came out last year right around Christmas, and they were really hard to get. I got one set, and I feel like it might be time to get another. Carla always grades in green. Carla, I always graded in purple. So I don't like red either. Okay, let's keep going because I have 2 more things I wanted to share with you. If you really want to help your struggling writers, and you have writers that are really, really low, not just kind of low. We all have the kind of lows. Okay. That's to be expected. We all have kind of lows. The best way to help them is to help them discover their love for writing, give them little bits of confidence along the way. But I know that I've been teaching 3rd grade and had a student who was like at kindergarten level, like legitimately, not me freaking out, but like legitimately she was at kindergarten level. In this case, and lots of us have this situation pop up every year. So it's don't think, oh my gosh, woe is me. This is going to be like really hard. Like it happens. Allow this student to write with pictures. This is meeting them where they're at, and then we start to push them. But remember, we want them to love writing. That's the first goal. And so if they're really discouraged because they literally don't even know how to write yet, like anything, this isn't just like they have bad spelling. This is like they probably don't read either, my guess. Allowing them to write with pictures gets off some of the pressure of the writing so they can still tell stories, which starts to build that love and that confidence. This is a combination I would use with a student who cannot write. It does not need to be used with students who are slightly below level, okay? I really want to emphasize that. We all have students below level. It does not need to be used with all students, but there are probably some teachers here who have a student who might need this particular accommodation. So you start by having them draw their story in pictures, and then they write one word for each picture. This is where I would start them. So if they're telling a story about going to a baseball game, maybe they would draw a baseball and a baseball bat, and they might write ball, game, something like that. Okay. And you just let them tell their story with the pictures, because let's be real, pictures are a type of writing. In fact, that's how stories were told in the beginning of time, is through pictures. So it's okay if they want to start, if you need to start someone here, then you need to. It should not be half your class, unless maybe in the special education situation. If you're a special education teacher, you may have more students you need to start here. Regular education teachers, you may have one. Okay. Eventually, after they've been telling some stories with pictures and one word for each picture, then you can have them start to write a simple sentence for each picture as they progress. So now maybe instead of just writing ball, maybe it would write, I play ball. Okay. That's how you're going to just, you start where they're at, and you just push them just a little bit as they get some confidence. All right. Yes, Dawn, this is perfect for your non-reader. Okay. Now, another feature that you may have to use with some students, not all, you may have a student or two in your classroom that you need to allow them to use a device and then use the talk to text feature. I find this to be especially helpful if you have students with dyslexia and dysgraphia, but there are probably some other cases where it might be the best. If your student is so overwhelmed by handwriting and spelling, then doing the talk to text can help them to get over that, like fear. The important thing is we want them to tell a story. So if we can somehow remove some of the barriers that are making them feel like they can't tell the story, then we are going to get them to love writing faster. Just because they're using the talk to text now does not mean they will always have to, but it gives them some confidence now until they are ready to start putting words on the paper themselves. So this is another thing to consider if you have a student who is maybe a non-reader or maybe has dyslexia. Sometimes just telling the story, using a device, allowing it to type it out. It will make mistakes, right? Because the talk to text is not perfect. It will make mistakes, and that's okay, because if the student was going to write it out, it was going to make mistakes too. But sometimes it just removes some of that pressure for them. We just want them to tell stories and love telling stories. That's the first step, remember? Okay, number 9. I had to end with my signature line, and that is to focus on growth over perfection. So often as teachers, we look at the end result we need them to get, whether it's that standardized test or that rubric, or I don't know, my admin, we had like a writing test at the end of the year, and it was part of like our pay. And we just hyper focus on where we have to get them. And when we do that, we get anxious. And when we're anxious, guess what? We make our students anxious. Your students do not need to master every single writing skill. Your students do not need to master every single thing on the writing rubric to make growth. So I would forget. I'm going to be real honest. I would forget where my students started at. I would forget how far they'd come. But I want you to remember that all of your students are going to grow this year. They're just not going to grow at the same pace, and they're not supposed to. So if they're not growing at the same pace, you're doing something right, because that is normal. That is how it's supposed to be. They're not going to grow at the same pace, but they will grow. And probably the student who's currently what you consider your most struggling writer will be your greatest success story at the end of the year. Yeah, let me tell you that again. The writer you have in your head right now that you're like, oh, they can't even write a sentence. That's the writer that's going to be your biggest success story at the end of the year. And I sometimes think when you know that right now, you can show up for that student in a totally different way on Monday. But when you're feeling down and out, because you will, sometimes this happens, you feel down and out. You thought you taught a great mini lesson, but maybe it wasn't as great as you thought, right? I want you to pull out their very first writing sample, the very first thing they ever wrote for you, the thing that had only 2 words on it, whatever it was. I want you to compare it with what they did this week. You're going to find they've probably already grown. You've probably forgotten where they started because they're still not where you want them to be. It still seems so overwhelming, but they grow quite a bit each month. And I would easily forget. And somewhere around Christmas, I'd start feeling really stressed. And I'd pull out their first writing sample. And I'm like, oh, well, dang, they're doing a lot better. They're going to grow this year. Lots of them are going to grow by leaps and bounds, but they're not going to be perfect. That's okay, because you are not their only stop in their educational journey, right? They're going to continue to learn writing strategies next year. All right. Would you like me to help you to continue learning so that you can implement a successful writing workshop that your students are going to love, but you are also going to see growth? This is something I love to do for teachers. I would love to dig in deep. And so I'm going to invite you, this is a special invitation, to join the Not So Wimpy Writing Masterclass. This is an online professional development program for teachers who teach in 2nd, 3rd, 4th, or 5th grade. Even if you have struggling writers, this program is designed to help your writers to love writing and to grow as writers. In the process, you become a confident and happy writing teacher. Awesome. Yeah, my masterclass alumni, tell me you're here. I'd love to see that. Okay, by the end of this masterclass, this online professional development course, it is self-paced, by the way, so you can take it anytime you want. And by the end, you're going to have nailed down a schedule that includes time for writing, because I know some of us haven't made that time yet. You're going to learn how to deliver an effective mini lesson with mentor text and anchor charts. I told you to break down those lessons, but in the masterclass, we go deep into how to do that. You're going to have tools that your students need to be able to write independently for 20 to 30 minutes. So if you heard me say it and you're like, oh my gosh, my students aren't going to be able to write for that long, I'm going to show you how in the masterclass. You're going to discover simple strategies for conferencing with every single writer every week. I'm going to help you with exactly what to say and do during your conference time. You're going to have practical ways to help your students love writing, because you know that's the most important part. And you're going to have step-by-step plans for implementing writing workshop from day one. So I am going to give you the step-by-step how to get writing workshop off in the right direction, even if you're not starting the first day of school. Even if for you, it's going to be starting off 2nd quarter on a better note. That's fine, right? It's all about growth, not perfection. And I'm going to make sure that you have confidence when it comes to teaching writing, because you deserve that. And lots of us just never had training on how to be successful writing teachers. And I want to make sure you have that training so that you just feel really good about what to do during writing workshop. Okay, so here's what comes with the masterclass. You get 7 modules, which contains 38 short training videos. I broke them up to really short pieces because we break lessons apart into small pieces. It helps. You're going to have a workbook for note-taking. You'll have lots of different printables, including rubrics, conference forms, book lists, all kinds of printables, anything I could think of to make writing workshop easier for you. You'll also get a 10-hour PD certificate. So I couldn't stop there. I love bonuses. So you're going to get all of that, like the 38 training videos, the workbook, the PD certificate, but you're also going to get this extra module. When you're done with the masterclass, you can take the extra module. It includes tips for personal narrative, opinion, and informational writing. Just really, I dove in deep to the lessons and the skills that are especially tricky in each of those genres, and I gave you some tips. Bonus number 2, I'm going to give you compare and contrast writing units for fiction and nonfiction. So that's 4 weeks of writing lesson plans, anchor charts, student printables that you can use during writing or during reading. And you also get ongoing support through a members-only Facebook group. We have a Facebook group for all of our masterclass teachers. It's a perfect place to ask questions. It's a perfect place to celebrate an amazing lesson. It's also a great place to ask for suggestions about a specific student or a specific skill you need to teach. We're there, the Not So Wimpy team, as well as thousands of other teachers who've gone through the masterclass. All right, if you're ready to join us in the masterclass, this is the address notsowimpyteacher.com/yes. It is one payment of $97 for the entire program. And so we would love to welcome you into the program today. You can head over to notsowimpyteacher.com/yes if this sounds like exactly what you need. And remember, it is self-paced, which means you don't have to take it today or tomorrow. You can work through it slowly. You can wait and watch it all over your fall break or winter break, or you can binge watch it tonight if you want. You get to decide. So this is some feedback from Christina. She took our masterclass and she said that her students have either met or exceeded expectations. She said that she was even able to do it online. And specifically, there was one student. I just love that she talked about this one student. She said he would turtle. That's how she explained it. But that meant he would just shut down and he wouldn't write. I'm sure you can think of a student like that because I don't know what to write about and they do nothing, right? And she said that she just walked them through the program step by step using our Not So Wimpy process, and that he recently, on a standardized test, wrote a 5-paragraph informational essay that was brilliant. I mean, he went from he couldn't write anything to writing a 5-paragraph essay, and she said he was actually confident. She's seen growth in all of her students. She said, I think everyone should take this course. Thank you, Christina. All right, a few questions I get often. I wanted to go ahead and just answer them right away. What grade level is it for? The masterclass was created for teachers in grades 2 through 5, even if you have struggling writers. A lot of times they'll say, but what about first? I really created it for grades 2 through 5. That's where I feel like I am going to be able to give you the most value. What if I have to use a certain curriculum? Yep, about half of our masterclass teachers are required to use a curriculum and the other half have nothing. They're both a problem. They both can be a problem. But in the masterclass, I'm going to give you strategies that are going to increase your confidence and your results, regardless of the curriculum that you use. You may not be able to use every single strategy I teach, but just like the students, you only have to use a few to see massive growth, right? So you won't be alone if you're in the masterclass and you have a specific curriculum. In fact, we have lots of discussions about different curriculum. So you are good to go whether you have a curriculum or don't. And then this is a good one I get. What if I don't have time for the course now? And just a reminder, it's self-paced. And that means you can watch the videos anytime you want, and you can watch them as many times as you want. A lot of my alumni say they like to come back and rewatch videos as they get to be stronger and stronger writing teacher. They're ready to hear more and more of the strategies. And I love that about it. You don't get that in any other professional development where you can come back to all the material over and over again. But with the masterclass, you have lifetime access. So you don't have to worry about trying to get it all in really quickly, okay? Again, if you are ready to join us, we are super excited to welcome you. NotSoWimpyTeacher.com/yes. And all the information is there to get you signed up. We would be super excited to welcome you to our masterclass family. We've had over 10,000 teachers join us already. So we're super excited for you to be the next one. Okay, I have just a little bit of time. If there is a question that I can answer, I'd be happy to do so. So if I've missed a question, if there's something, let's see, Alexis, is a masterclass a limited time offer recurring or join at any time? Right now, this is a special offer and we don't have it open all the time at this point. We hope to at some time soon, but right now this is just a special offer that I'm making because you guys were here and I wanted to really reward you. I knew you guys needed it. Erin said, the class gives you the how to teach any writing curriculum. I think someone asked, should I get the class or should I get the writing bundles? Here's the thing. The writing bundles are a curriculum. If you have no curriculum, it's awfully helpful. But if you don't know how to teach writing, you don't feel confident about conferences, grading, and all of that, then having the materials is only helping you this much. So I would start with the course. And we do offer a discount on the bundles inside of the course. If you're a member of the course, you can purchase the bundles inside and they're about 20% off there. So this one was about grammar. Let me see if I can grab it. Here it is. What grade do you take for grammar? Is it just the Friday assessment? I generally just took the Friday assessment because 1 grade per week in grammar was plenty for me. It kind of depends on what your school requires. If your school requires more than 1 grade per week, you could take a grade on the task cards. But if your school doesn't require more than 1 grade per week, I would just use the assessment as a grade. Keep it easy. All right. Let me see if I miss any questions. Go ahead. If I missed your question, feel free to type it out again. I joined the masterclass this summer, but could have access to the bonus materials now. When you joined, you got access to bonus materials. So head to your library and you have bonuses there. So you get the bonuses from whenever you purchase. We always try to keep them. We keep them pretty similar, but you have bonuses. If you go to your library, they're always there. I'm looking for questions. Karen says, it's self-paced, but do I have access forever? Or does it go away? Access forever. You have lifetime of the course. So as long as the course exists, you have it. We've had the course for 3 years, and teachers who purchased 3 years ago still have access. If I make any updates to the course material, we give those to you as well. All right. Jane, the compare and contrast units, you can get them on TBT. And bonus number 3 is a Facebook support group, and you do have access to that if you've anytime you purchase the masterclass. We've always had that as a bonus. So you do get that one. Go ahead and make sure you just log into your course, and there's a link to it on the sidebar. Join us. There's lots of great conversations that happen there. In the masterclass, do members get the writing bundle? We don't put the writing bundle in the masterclass only because half our members already have curriculum. We don't want them to buy something they don't need. But we do offer the curriculum, our bundles, at 20% off inside. Love this. Kelly, one of my biggest takeaways from the masterclass is to focus on growth. I need those reminders. Also, of course, love the great step-by-step lesson plans. Thanks, Kelly. Can we purchase the masterclass through TBT? At this time, I'm not able to sell it through TBT. It just doesn't meet the terms and use of TBT. So we sell it at notsowimpyteacher.com/, there we go, /yes. I hope that helps. Let me go back down and make sure. Okay. Nikki said she bought one of the grammar units and her kids, she had a kid struggle with it. Well, I think it's just like writing. Every kid is not going to master every single grammar skill. Sometimes they're not ready for it. Idioms, adverbs, and proverbs to me is pretty complex. I probably wouldn't teach it this early in the year, as it does require some deeper thinking skills as well as reading skills. So I would suggest coming back to it maybe in quarter 3 or 4, if it were me, Nikki. Okay. This is good. I have children who want to draw when they finish writing. Do I let them or have them write on other stories? I always have my students move on to write in other stories, but you can make drawing part of the publishing process. There's no point to draw the pictures on their draft because that's not going to end up being what the end product anyway. So during writing, we're always working on our stories, but yeah, it can be part of publishing, and it can be kind of like the reward. My students look forward to publishing because they get to do some of those things like the pictures or maybe typing it or however you decide to publish. That would be my recommendation, Shannon. Becky said, could you translate some units into Spanish? I'm not going to, and here's why. I don't know Spanish, and so even if I hired someone out to do it, I wouldn't know if it was accurate. And I have to put my name and I have to believe in the resources I put out there. So I'm not the right person to create Spanish resources, but there are other teachers who speak Spanish who are much better suited, and they can check and fix typos and those sorts of things that I would never be able to do. So we will not be creating Spanish resources, and it's just because we want to make sure our resources are top notch, and that's not something that we're qualified to do. I hope that makes sense. Let's see if Tammy said, how do I present if it's a virtual class? Google Classroom, Sheets, Docshare. Okay, how to teach this virtually. First of all, do your mini lessons with them on whatever you're doing, Google Meets or Zoom or however you are meeting with them, or record them and share the video with them so that they still get the mini lesson, and then you assign the task. The short task, their drafts, they can all do that on a Google Doc because it's probably the easiest way to share back with you. It's so easy once they've shared their Google Doc, or you could even create all of the initial Google Docs and share them with them. That way you have access to all of them and can see in real time what they're doing. That's probably the easiest way to go about it. Okay. Judy said, where do you have your students keep their writing? I teach 3rd graders and they cannot handle the wide-lined notebook papers. Well, honestly, part of it is just practice, right? But I like to use composition notebooks because they stay together better than spiral notebooks. They don't take up nearly as much space as binders. And also with binders, you had to keep putting loose leaf paper in and out and like opening the binder clips and closing. Oh, it's just a mess. So I like composition notebooks the best. And I teach my students to skip lines in composition notebooks. It takes time to teach them to do this correctly. It takes time for them to get used to it. But that's what I would do. I have them draft in their notebook, and then they go back and do all the revisions right in that notebook. and it keeps everything together in one place. Okay. Patricia, I haven't started with what I've learned from the masterclass due to how low my kids are. They are second graders, but like early first graders. Will they still be successful? Absolutely. Every second grade teacher has students who are at kinder and first grade level. We know that. That's why when first grade teachers ask me if it's a good fit for them, I say no, because I know that their low writers are going to struggle. I just think Patricia, just like every grade level, not just second, is just remembering you're just one stop. They're not going to master every single skill. Focus on how much are they growing. The master class is a strategy for how to teach writing, and it will work with second graders, even low second graders. It's just a process and a procedure that's going to make them feel more confident. And that's why we know it will help your struggling writers and your on level and exceptional writers. So absolutely. Kim said, can we listen to the training again? Absolutely. It looks like, Kim, like you're listening from YouTube. You can come back to my YouTube channel or send a link to your colleagues to listen to it on my YouTube channel. Absolutely. Jennifer said, do they type their final copies or rewrite them? Jennifer, it's totally up to you how you want to do publishing in the masterclass. We have an entire lesson with publishing ideas. You can switch it up for each masterpiece. Maybe one masterpiece, they do type it. In the Common Core standards for third grade, we had to have our kids type some of the writing. So we did that sometimes. It was honestly pretty frustrating, but it's important for them to learn. Other times we'd have them rewrite it. Sometimes we would have them voice record it. And there's lots of different ways you can do it. And I think switching it up makes it even more fun, and kids look forward to the publishing process even more. All righty. Okay. All right, my friends, this has been a long one. I'm so thankful that you followed us over here. Lots of you had to watch on YouTube. I guess Facebook was giving us trouble. Of course, that's how it would go down. But I'm super excited that you were able to join us. If you didn't get to hear the whole training, I hope you'll go back and listen to each of the 9 strategies. I think they're really important. And if you're ready, I'd love to dig in even deeper. I think these 9 strategies are really important, but I'd love to dig in even deeper so that you have a really confident plan for teaching writing this year and next year. And so if you teach in grades 2 through 5, we would love to have you join the masterclass. You can head over to NSWTteacher.com/yes. And if you still have questions about the masterclass, you can ask them there. You can go ahead and put your question in there, and we will get back to you as quickly as we can. But thank you so much for joining me this afternoon. I know your time is really valuable, and I want you to get back to doing whatever you want to be doing tonight as you prepare and rest for another week of getting to teach your students. So thank you, and I will see you soon.